A weapon that burned on water and kept burning no matter what anyone threw at it. A book written 600 years ago that nobody on Earth has been able to read. Not cryptographers, not linguists, not modern AI. A 4,500-year-old pyramid aligned to true north within a 20th of a degree. Ancient civilizations left behind objects that modern scientists, with every advantage of technology and time, still cannot explain, reproduce, or, in some cases, even identify. Some of them sit in museums right now. Some are still half buried where they were found. And a few of them are so strange that serious academics have spent entire careers arguing about what they even are. These are 20 ancient mysteries that still have historians stumped. Number 20. Greek fire. The Byzantine Empire had a weapon so devastating that naval enemies reportedly jumped into the sea rather than face it. A liquid fire that burned on water, that water itself made worse, that clung to ships and skin and kept burning no matter what you threw at it. Byzantine sailors sprayed it from tubes like a flamethrower. They lobbed it in clay grenades. It saved Constantinople more than once. And then, somewhere around the 13th century, the recipe just vanished. The engineers who knew it either died or went silent. Historians have been guessing at the formula for 800 years, and nobody has cracked it yet. Number 19. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. It has been standing in India for over 1,600 years, put up sometime around the 4th or 5th century AD, and it has almost no rust on it. None. A 6-ton iron column sitting outside through monsoons, heat, humidity, and centuries of air pollution, looking better than most metal you would find on a building from 50 years ago. Scientists have figured out part of it. The iron contains an unusually high phosphorus content, which creates a thin passive film on the surface that protects it from oxidation. That part is understood. What nobody has figured out is how ancient Indian metalworkers produced iron of that exact purity without any of the equipment modern metallurgists would consider the bare minimum necessary for the job. The smelting process, the specific conditions, the precise composition. None of it was written down in a form that survived. We can analyze the pillar at the molecular level today and still cannot deliberately reproduce it. It stands 23 feet tall in the courtyard of the Qutb Minar complex in New Delhi, not rusting, while researchers publish papers about it. Number 18. Roman concrete. Modern concrete, the material holding together every building, road, bridge, and seawall built anywhere on Earth right now, starts degrading the moment it is poured. A few decades in seawater and it is crumbling. Roman concrete submerged in Mediterranean seawater for 2,000 years has been found to actually get stronger over time. Scientists figured out the mechanism a few years ago. Seawater causes a mineral called tobermarite to crystallize inside the mix, reinforcing it from the inside out like structural rebar that builds itself over centuries. Remarkable. But here is what they have not figured out: how the Romans landed on that exact recipe in the first place. The combination of volcanic ash, seawater, and lime that produces this self-reinforcing effect is not an intuitive thing to arrive at. There is no surviving Roman text that gives the full formula. Whether they hit on it through accident or understood something about materials that was simply never committed to paper clearly enough to survive is still an open question. Engineers today are still studying ancient Roman harbor structures, trying to reverse engineer a construction technique worked out 2 millennia ago. Number 17. The Phaistos disc. A small fired clay disc found on the island of Crete, dated to around 1700 BC, with both sides covered in a spiral of stamped symbols. 241 of them, drawn from 45 distinct types. Little figures of walking humans, running figures, heads, fish, birds, plants, geometric shapes, and a few others nobody has identified with certainty. all of them pressed individually into wet clay with pre-made stamps before the disc was fired, making it the earliest known example of movable type printing in the historical record. And nobody has decoded it, not even a little bit. The symbols do not correspond to linear A, linear B, any Egyptian script, or anything else from the ancient Mediterranean world. Over more than 100 years of study, scholars have proposed the disc is a hymn, a prayer, a royal genealogy, an astronomical table, a legal decree, a shipping list, and a board game. The honest answer is that nobody knows. The disc has been sitting in the Heraklion Archaeological Museum since 1908. A century of serious academic attention and not a single proposed interpretation has held up. Number 16. The Viking Sunstone. Medieval Norse sagas describe a navigational instrument called a solarstein, a sunstone, that Viking sailors could use to pinpoint the position of the sun on completely overcast days. For centuries, historians assumed this was poetic invention. Then, in 2013, archaeologists found an unusual crystal in the wreck of an Elizabethan ship sunk off Alderney, a piece of Icelandic spar, a transparent form of naturally occurring calcite. When you hold it up and rotate it slowly under flat, cloudy light, it polarizes the light in a way that reveals exactly where the sun sits behind the cloud cover. It works. Not theoretically. It actually works well enough to navigate an open ocean by. So the sagas were right about the object. What researchers still cannot establish is the operational technique. How Viking navigators learned to read the crystal, how accurate they could be over long ocean crossings, and how they incorporated it with other tools. The stone survived and was found. The training, the technique, the accumulated craft knowledge, none of that made it. You could pick up that calcite today and not know what to do with it. Number 15. The Dendera carvings. And this next one has been starting fights between engineers and archaeologists since at least the 1930s. Inside the Hathor Temple complex in Egypt, there are stone relief carvings showing figures holding large, elongated, bulb-shaped objects with something inside each one that resembles either a serpent or a filament, attached at the base to what some people identify as an insulating column and a cable leading to a separate box. Egyptologists say it is a lotus flower giving birth to a serpent, a recognized mythological motif in Egyptian religious art. That is probably the right answer. But if you set those carvings next to a diagram of a late 19th century incandescent light bulb, the resemblance becomes difficult to dismiss outright. Some engineers have built physical models based on the carvings and produced a faint visible glow from them when connected to a power source. Mainstream archaeology is skeptical for good reason. There is no other material evidence of electrical technology anywhere in ancient Egypt. But the carvings are there. They look the way they look. Serious researchers have been going back and forth about them for nearly a century, and the debate has not been settled. Number 14. The Voynich manuscript. In the early 20th century, a Polish rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich bought a small handwritten book from a Jesuit college in central Italy. Carbon dating later placed its creation between 1404 and 1438. The book is 240 pages long, written entirely in an unknown script that flows left to right, organized into paragraphs, with word lengths and symbol repetition that match the internal structure of a real language. The pages are illustrated with drawings of plants nobody has ever identified in the natural world, astronomical diagrams, circular charts, and what appear to be naked figures bathing in pools connected by tubes. The script has never been decoded, not by Allied cryptographers during World War II, not by modern AI systems trained on every known language and writing system. Not by any of the hundreds of serious academics and dedicated amateurs who have published proposed solutions over the last century. Some researchers think it is an elaborate hoax, a constructed imitation of language with no actual meaning behind it. But the statistical patterns in the text do not behave the way random fabrication behaves. The numbers simply do not match what nonsense produces. The manuscript is now at Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book Library. It has been there since 1969. Nobody knows what it says. Number 13, the Saihuite Stone. In the Apurimac region of Peru, there is a boulder roughly 4 meters across with over 200 figures carved across its upper surface. Jaguars, snakes, lizards, frogs, human figures, geometric shapes, and what researchers describe as detailed hydraulic diagrams, channels, pools, terraces, and staircases cut across the rock in patterns that appear to represent a real Inca landscape, and they connect in a logical sequence that would have required careful planning. When it rains, water moves through the carved channels in a controlled, directed flow. The Incas built some of the most sophisticated irrigation infrastructure in the ancient world, so the idea that this stone was a kind of hydraulic scale model fits within what we know they were capable of. But what specific site it represents, and whether it functioned as a planning tool, a ritual object, or something else entirely, has never been established. Spanish colonizers damaged the carvings deliberately, targeting the stone because it was a center of indigenous worship. Whatever knowledge the carvers embedded in that rock did not survive the encounter. Number 12. The Baigong Pipes. Near a pyramid-shaped mountain in Qinghai Province in western China, there are 3 caves cut into the rock. 2 of them are too small to enter. The third contains a system of metal pipes, some running into the mountain, some running toward a nearby salt lake, some set directly into the cave walls at various heights. The pipes vary from roughly the diameter of a toothpick to the diameter of a drain pipe. A 2002 survey found more pipes on the lake bed and along the shoreline, several hundred meters from the cave entrance. Chinese scientists who analyzed the material found iron oxide, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide, consistent with manufactured iron, plus an unidentified fraction making up around 8% of the composition. Some researchers argue the pipes are artifacts of an unknown ancient civilization. Geologists argue they are fossilized tree roots, gradually replaced by iron-bearing minerals over millions of years. That explains the tubular shapes. It also means the apparent directionality and interconnection would have to be coincidental. Nobody has resolved that argument, and the pipes are still sitting there. Number 11. The Longyu Caves. In 1992, a farmer in Zhejiang Province decided to drain a pond that locals had always believed was simply very deep. What was underneath was not a pond floor. It was the entrance to a massive man-made cavern, the first of 24 enormous caves carved entirely by hand from solid siltstone, covering roughly 30,000 square meters of underground space. The chambers reach up to 30 meters high. The walls, ceilings, and floors of all 24 caves are covered with the same chisel mark pattern, cut at a consistent 60-degree angle. The stonework is precise throughout, and there is no record of any of this in Chinese historical documents, not one mention. For a construction project requiring a large, coordinated workforce, operating in one of the most thoroughly documented civilizations on Earth, the total silence in the written record is the strangest thing about the whole site. Archaeologists place the caves at a minimum of 2,000 years old. Who ordered them built, what they were used for, and why nobody in recorded Chinese history ever mentioned them remains completely unknown. Number 10. The Nazca Lines. Cut into a high desert plateau in southern Peru are hundreds of perfectly straight lines, geometric shapes, and enormous animal figures. A hummingbird stretching 90 meters from wingtip to wingtip, a spider, a monkey with a curled tail, a condor. Some of the straight lines run for miles across the plateau without any deviation. None of it is visible from the ground. From an airplane, the full shapes become immediately obvious. The Nazca people created these between roughly 500 BC and 500 AD by scraping away the reddish-brown surface layer of gravel to expose the pale ground beneath. The technique itself is not particularly complicated. The scale of the planning required to produce geometrically accurate mile-scale figures without any aerial reference point is what researchers are still working through. The purpose is what nobody has agreed on. astronomical calendar, ritual walking paths, offerings intended for gods who could see from above, water source markers. All of it has been proposed, and none of it has fully held up under scrutiny. Number 9. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Over 300 near-perfect stone balls scattered across the Diquís Delta of southern Costa Rica, some weighing up to 15 tons and nearly 2 meters across. The ancient Diquís culture made them by pecking and grinding natural boulders, a process requiring geometric precision without any measuring tools researchers have been able to identify. Some are round to within a few millimeters. The largest required rock transported from miles away through dense jungle. Nobody knows what they represented or why they were placed the way they were. The Diquís culture is gone and left no written record of any of it. Number 8. The Yonaguni Monument. Off the southern tip of Japan, about 25 meters underwater, there is a large angular rock formation that looks like a tiered man-made structure. Flat terrace platforms, straight edges, what appears to be a road, what might be the remains of a stadium. Geologist Masaki Kimura spent years diving it and argued it was an artificial site submerged when sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age. Other geologists say sandstone just fractures that way naturally along straight plains. Both arguments have technical support. Nobody has produced the evidence to close the case. Number 7. The Sacsayhuaman Walls. And we are now entering the part of this list where the stonework itself stops making sense. Outside Cusco in Peru, the Incas assembled a fortress using blocks up to 120 tons each, cut to irregular polygonal shapes and fitted without mortar so precisely that nothing fits between them. Not a blade, not a sheet of paper. Each block had to be shaped with exact reference to its neighbors in 3 dimensions simultaneously. Earthquakes that have leveled Spanish colonial construction in Cusco have not shifted those walls. Multiple theories exist about the cutting and fitting process. None resolves how ancient workers consistently achieved joints that modern stonemasons would find remarkable. Number 6. The Baghdad Battery. In 1938, archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig found a clay jar near Baghdad with an iron rod inside a copper cylinder, sealed with asphalt. Reproductions filled with acidic liquid generate between 1.5 and 2 volts of electricity, enough current to electroplate a thin layer of metal onto another surface. And archaeologists have found ancient Mesopotamian jewelry with metal coatings so thin and uniform that electroplating is the most plausible explanation available. Whether the battery was actually used for that or something else entirely is still being debated. The device exists, the possibly electroplated objects exist. The direct connection has never been proven. Number 5. The Great Pyramid's Hidden Void. In 2017, a team using muon tomography, an imaging technique used to map the interior of active volcanoes, found a previously unknown void inside the Great Pyramid above the Grand Gallery, roughly 30 meters long. It was the first major internal discovery at Giza in over a century. Nobody knows what is in it, what it was built for, or how to access it without damaging the surrounding structure. The Great Pyramid is the most analyzed structure on Earth. Researchers have been studying it for hundreds of years. There is a room inside it that no one has entered. Number 4. The Antikythera mechanism. Recovered from a Greek shipwreck in 1900, this corroded block of bronze gears was an ancient analog computer capable of predicting solar and lunar eclipses, tracking the positions of the 5 known planets, and marking the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games, all from a hand-crank device using at least 30 gears. The differential gearing system inside it was not reinvented in Europe until the 16th century. There is a 1,400-year gap between this device and anything mechanically comparable in the historical record. Who designed it and how it was manufactured with tools available at the time is still unresolved. Number 3. Damascus steel. From roughly the 11th century through the 17th, Islamic smiths produced blades with properties that made European steel look like a first draft. Edges that held far longer, flexibility without breaking, and a distinctive rippled surface pattern that appeared during the forging process itself. The technique disappeared around 1750 and has not been fully reconstructed since. Modern analysis of historical blade samples has found carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires inside the metal, structures that require precise temperature control to produce. Smiths who made those blades worked by eye and feel, without instruments, consistently achieving nanoscale results. How they did that is still being studied. Number 2, the Egyptian obelisks. The largest completed obelisk, standing in Luxor, weighs 227 tons and was carved from a single piece of granite at Aswan, then transported roughly 200 kilometers north. The Egyptians did this dozens of times over thousands of years. They documented almost everything about their civilization in exhaustive detail: farming, warfare, religion, death, daily life. They left almost no surviving record of how the obelisks were transported and raised upright. Experimental teams using rope, sand, sledges, and large organized workforces have attempted reconstructions. None has fully solved the erection problem. Getting a 200-ton granite spike to stand without cracking it remains technically interesting to modern engineers. The obelisks are up. We are still figuring out how. Number 1, the Pyramids of Giza. The Great Pyramid was the tallest structure humans had ever built for nearly 4,000 years. It contains roughly 2.3 million stone blocks. Some of its interior chambers are lined with granite transported from Aswan 800 kilometers away, pieces weighing up to 70 tons. The outer casing stones, mostly stripped away during the Middle Ages, were fitted with joints measured in hundredths of a millimeter and polished to a finish that reflected sunlight for miles across the desert. The alignment to true north is accurate to 0.05 degrees. Historians estimate around 20,000 workers built it over 20 years, about 800 blocks per day, every day for 2 decades. The workforce and the timeline are not in dispute. A complete explanation for how the heaviest interior stones were moved, fitted, and raised to height has still not arrived. That is 20 objects, buildings, and mysteries that modern science, with all of its tools and all of its time, still cannot fully account for. Some of them will eventually be explained. Researchers are actively working on the Voynich manuscript, the Roman concrete recipe, the hidden void inside the Great Pyramid, and the exact metallurgy of Damascus steel right now. Others probably never will be. The knowledge was carried in the heads of people who died without writing it down, and the trail has gone cold for 1,000 years or more. What all of them have in common is that they were made by people who are often described as primitive by anyone who has not actually studied them closely.